If you've been watching moving abroad content to Europe and wondering why it looks so easy to everybody else, it's because it's not, and they're lying to you. In this video, I'm going to go through a lot of the things I experienced moving there, and I think I have a very different perspective because I did everything on my own with no help, knowing nobody, without a job, everything. So let's get into it. So you see a lot of stuff on Instagram saying, oh, move to Europe, which I definitely love and encourage if that's for you. However, a lot of what you see online is just a total lie when it comes to how easy it is and what the process might be. I think a lot of Americans like the idea if they've traveled there and like, oh, I like this, but I think the biggest thing you really have to think about is the lifestyle and if that lifestyle is for you. So compared to a lot of Americans, the lifestyle in Europe is quite different. There are a lot of different things to consider, and life is very different there, especially when it comes to the ease of things. And moving to any country, it is hard, especially the visa process. So that is the first thing you have to think about is, will this actually fit my needs? Most places Americans are moving to, in specifically Europe, are going to be non-driving cities, so you don't need a car. You probably could have one unless you're living in a smaller town, but if you were moving to a big city, so that is definitely a big adjustment for some people, especially if you have never lived without a car before. I lived in Chicago without a car for 7 years before moving, and I really enjoyed that, and so that is why I chose a big city where I would not need a car. But this isn't the case for everybody. And it is a lot different taking public transit 24/7 pretty much. You can call, a cab or something, but pretty much you're relying on public transportation versus a car. So that is something to consider, especially if you have some type of physical ailment that might walking a little bit harder, because normally when you take public transportation, you are going to be walking more, whether it's to a bus stop or to a metro or to a train or to a tram or something. So that is something to consider. Or if you have kids, hauling them all there, I'm assuming takes more work and things like that. So that is definitely something to consider. If you're going to be in a place without public transit, can you really do that and accept it? Especially when weather isn't good, whether it's too hot or too cold or too windy, or if it's snowy wherever you're going. So definitely something to think about ahead of time. The next biggest thing I would say for a lot of people is the visa process. It pretty much seems like any country you go to, the visa is not easy. Whether it's Europe or South America or coming to America, whatever, it is not easy, and it does take time, and you want to do the research and make sure you are doing it the correct way. Most visas for Spain, you can apply once you're already in Spain. However, there's one visa you have to do while here. So making sure you are doing something, and if you want to stay for over the 90-day Schengen limit, which is an American passport, meaning you're not European and can't stay longer, that is something you will need to do, and make sure you have all the documents ready. If you're doing it yourself, a lot of people do hire lawyers to help, which lawyers are a lot cheaper in Europe, so that's why they're not paid as good. But they can help, but also making sure you do your research on a good lawyer, because I have had some friends who have lawyers helping them and they are not very good. It takes super long. They're spending a ton of extra money they don't need to. So doing your research on that as well, and looking up what the cost might be, because it could be a couple $1,000s depending on your visa and how much work it is, or if you have to appeal and different things like that. So make sure you are thinking about that when moving to a new place as well. Another big thing is also if you're doing it by yourself versus living with somebody else. Of course, when you go with someone else, whether you're moving there with a friend or a partner, spouse, whatever the case might be, even a child, you kind of have a guaranteed friend in a sense, or someone there to talk about things with and do things with. And a lot of people, especially in the US, don't move around too much, and they're not used to not being around friends and family and having to make new friends and family. Honestly, I've done a whole video on friends. I think I'll do an updated version, because what I'm learning from a lot of people I have, especially met being back here in the US versus a lot of my European friends, is a lot of people have never had to make friends before outside of work or school. It's very easy when you're in school or have an in-person job of some sort or hybrid job where you can easily meet other people, and of course you're bonding because you have a similar interest of classes at school or your job, whatever the case may be. So making friends is really different. So it could feel, if you're prepared moving by yourself, if you don't know anybody, I moved without knowing anybody and had to make and meet all new friends when I was there. I got really lucky and met them my first week, but you really have to make an effort to do that and go out to events and doing different things. So you could be lonely for a little while. So kind of preparing yourself for that is another big thing that, to prepare yourself as much as you can, but to be aware of that situation and really make an effort to go out and make friends and meet people if that is the case. And I would highly recommend it too, even if you're going with a partner or somebody, and to meet other people from other countries, other interests. Part of moving abroad is expanding your horizons, whether it's people from different cultures and backgrounds, different languages, things like that. So that is the next big topic, will be the language barrier. Most countries in Europe do not have English as their language, while a lot of people now, especially younger people, all know English. It is not guaranteed that people will. So trying to learn at least the basics before moving there, hi, hello, where is this, really helps and kind of shows people you are trying. A lot of the big cities, you can pretty much get around with English, so I wouldn't worry about it, but at least try to make the effort to integrate a little bit. This helps, especially meeting locals and other people. You could meet people who speak a lot of other languages. A lot of people who aren't Americans speak a lot of other languages. America is really the only one where people really only speak one language. We might have learned it in school, but they don't put an emphasis on it. So that's kind of another thing, but I wouldn't see it as too much of a barrier unless you're in some really small town in Europe. They might not have as much English or know as much, but as long as you have something, and now with our phones, Google Translate and things like that make it a lot easier. So it is a lot better to get around and having maps and things like that. So definitely the language, and if it's a language you hopefully would want to learn long term if you're going to be living there, is definitely another consideration to have as well. Next, another big thing is, it's a really popular topic right now, but friction. A lot of what is in Europe is considered a lot of friction for Americans, meaning it is harder and you have to go out and do more things. You can't just order everything like you do in the US. There are getting to be more services there, but it is definitely a lot slower and not as many as here. Here in the US, you can just order groceries, let's say on Instacart, not even have to go to the grocery store, get delivered the same day. There is one big chain in Spain specifically that does do grocery delivery, but it's not the same day. You have to plan days ahead of time because they don't have a ton of people or services doing that because it's not common. So food delivery is getting more popular, but again, not as common. They do have Uber, and of course there's a lot of cabs you can just take, but you're not going to be driving everywhere, taking public transportation. A lot of the grocery stores, you're probably going to have to go to multiple to get everything you need, especially if you're doing a big haul or something specific. So doing all that. So I think that's where a lot of Americans really struggle when they try to integrate into Europe or realize it's not for them, is they miss those amenities. They miss the amenities of having everything at your fingertips, everything super fast. There is Amazon, and they do 2-day, but the Amazon is much, much smaller in what products you can order compared to here. So a ton of things like that. Americans want things fast. They want things now. They don't want to have to work around or do things like that. So I noticed that with some of my friends who have visited and family when we've gone over there, that is something that they struggle with, and especially the pace of it too. A lot of things in most European countries, not all, are pretty slow. You sit down at a table at a restaurant, takes 5 or 10 minutes maybe to come get a drink order, another 15-20 minutes or so to even order food, and the whole process is just a lot slower and a lot more social. That's the same with stores too. You're not going to be checking out super fast or getting help right away when you go into a store. They're definitely not pushy like they are in the US. And so just getting accustomed to just taking life slower, enjoying it as you can, and just kind of trying to integrate into their culture versus the American culture is a really big thing. You will also, just on your phone, especially if you have some type of social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, you will start getting a lot more news from around the globe. I have noticed a huge thing, especially being back in the US and trying to be more aware of the international environment when I'm there, is that a lot of stuff in America is just American news. So, of course, a lot of politics and different things like that going on. But in Europe, they have news like on YouTube when it comes up on just suggested news stuff. You'll see things from all over the world, from Europe to Africa to Asia to everywhere. People are a lot more informed of what's going on in the world with other people and big elections going on, or different things like that. So it's good to kind of be aware of your surroundings and kind of broadening your horizons just by being there. Those things will come up more because you're not in the US kind of government focused online system. Your horizons will be broadened that way as well. Another consideration will also, a big thing will be housing. So especially in Barcelona where I was, housing is super hard to find. Even if you have a visa, you speak Spanish, everything like that, it is such a competitive market. I would consider it similar to like living in New York City. You have to have everything ready to go, and their housing laws are a lot less strict than in the US, so that makes it harder as well. I've heard a lot of European places can be kind of hard, especially in big cities. It's very competitive. It, of course, is a lot cheaper, but finding something like in Spain, they don't really have rules around rejecting people for certain reasons. So I've had friends rejected because they're asking too many questions about what certain amounts were going to be in the lease contract when they were signing it, or just asking for too many things in general to be put in there, because we're used to having every single stipulation in a contract, especially a lease, when it comes to the US. So that is something also to really consider. I think that is very common in other countries as well. And then last, the biggest thing, also it is a lot cheaper. So it is a much better place if you don't have a ton of money or want to retire there. You can live on a lot less. Groceries cost a lot less. Housing is a lot less. Transportation is a lot less. Everything is just cheaper, which is nice. So I feel like it makes it easier to go out and enjoy things and just kind of try out new things and kind of be around that. So if you are on a tighter budget, it is a great thing. I've heard Asia, a lot of Asian places are pretty cheap as well, depending on where you are. So that could be a place to live, but I'm kind of speaking just more towards Europe. My experience traveling around there quite a bit and living there for a couple years now, but definitely a big perspective, and a lot of jobs that are seen as like prestigious in a sense in the US are not there. So like doctors, lawyers, maybe professors, a lot of jobs are kind of just seen as the same, which is kind of nice. They don't put an emphasis on your job as who you are and your life like in the US. So that is kind of nice. If you are still working, that kind of won't be something that's in your way or around as much, which is nice. So if you're kind of trying to get away from something like that, or if you're retired or unemployed, people, especially who are more open-minded, don't see that as a bad thing. So that's just kind of a big perspective. It is a big change to move to another country, especially if you're trying to make new friends, you're away from family, and it can be really tough, and it's to expect that, but in the end, it'll be worth it. I think it's like that moving anywhere new, even if you are, oh God. Moving within the US, it is very hard to kind of adjust and do all those things and feel guilt for leaving or going away, not being by friends and family. But I definitely recommend moving away at some point. I love Europe. I want to move back there at some point once I can make some more money or get a different type of job. But it is not for everybody, and it's good to, I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is really hard. It does take time. But if it's something you want to do, it's definitely feasible. But it's just really considering, can I live in this type of place? Because it is very different, especially if you're someone, like I was saying earlier, likes the easy ordering, delivering, driving. Those things are super easy and really given to you, but there it is not. So just taking into all those considerations so that you can make the best choice for yourself. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this series and continue to follow along.